and also remind our board members and any other speakers to speak directly into the microphone so that the recorder will pick up the sound for the purpose of our minutes. And it is critical that we ensure that the minutes be transcribed without leaving out any important information. At this time, I'd like to welcome and thank, first of all, for providing lunch for us, the board members, the South Carolina Association of School Administrators, and we'll be hearing from them a little bit later on in our meeting. Also, I would like to welcome and thank Laura Richland High School, JROTC from Richland County School District 1. They will be accompanied by Major Darrell Kelly. So if you will please, board members.
Right face, post.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Left face, forward, march.
Thank you again to Major Darrell Kelly and the JROTC from Lower Richland High School for the presentation of our colors. At this time, the chair will entertain, is there any objection to approving the minutes as presented for our meeting today? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the approval of the agenda as presented for today's meeting? Hearing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. We'll take this time now to recognize our visitors and any media that might be with us. We have quite entertaining and quite important list of visitors today. I'll begin with Ms. Rainey Knight from the EOC, along with Ms., I think that's Dana. Yeah?
Dana, yeah.
Are they here? Thank you for coming today. We also have Ms. Sherry East from the SCEA and Joni Lawson from the SCEA. Thank you for being here today. And we also have some special guests from SCASA, a long list, but we'll introduce you all formally in just a few minutes. But thank you all for coming today. And we will now, I'm just make sure there's no media present with us today. I don't want to overlook anyone. Okay, thank you. There is no state board chair report per se, but I will yield my time now to our superintendent. I went through those already.
God, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I will yield my time now to our superintendent, Dr. Molly Spearman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello, everyone. It's great to see all of you, and a special welcome to Dr. Rainey Knight, who is serving as the interim director of the Education Oversight Committee. Rainey, we look forward to working with you and your staff. Thanks for being here today. This month is October, and it is National Principals Month. And you know how important, as I do, how the job that principals have each day in their schools. I've said many times you can't have a great school without a great principal. And it takes a while for a great principal to be there and build that culture in a school to turn it into a really thriving community of success. And today we are very, very pleased to have with us 6 of our most outstanding principals and assistant principals in South Carolina. They have been named by the South Carolina Association of School Administrators as our state principals of the year. So I'd like to invite, first of all, our elementary state school principal of the year, Ms. Rhonda Rhodes, who comes to us from Taylor's Elementary. And Rhonda, if you'll come down front, and I'd like to ask Mr. Whitmore if he would go and join her, because she is one in his district from Taylor's Elementary School in Greenville County Schools. And Rhonda, thank you for your service and congratulations on being our state elementary principal of the year. And now, Mr. English, if you'll go up to stand in for, well, actually, you have Lexington County in your judicial circuit. So, Ms. Anna Miller. Anna is our middle principal of the year from Chapin Middle School, Lexington School District 5. Congratulations, Anna. Thank you for your service. Our high school principal of the year, Dr. Michael Lofton from Spring Hill High School. And Steve, we're going to ask you to fill in again, Mr. English, if you will. And congratulate Michael from Lexington School District 5, Richland 5, for being our state high school principal of the year. And now for the success people behind the principals. Just like in a marriage that takes 2 to make it work, so is the same with great schools with their assistant principals. Ms. Leah Stafford from Simpsonville Elementary School in Greenville County. And Mr. Whitmore, if you would do the honors of congratulating Leah. Leah, thank you for the great job you do every day. And Mr. Brennan, I'm going to ask you to go to the podium next to welcome Ms. Lakeisha Cook, who comes to us from Richland School District 2, where she is serving, was the assistant principal at Muller Road Middle. That's where she won the award, and she did such an outstanding job, they moved her up to principal at White Knoll. She's serving out at White Knoll now in Lexington. And finally, our high school assistant principal of the year, Ms. Deborah Miller from Nations Ford in York County. And so that means Dr. Woodall. If you would go and join her, principal to principal there. And we want to say a special thank you to SCASA, Beth Phibbs, the Executive Director. April's with her today. Thank you both for the work that y'all do in supporting all of our administrators across the state. We've had a busy month just this past week. The report cards were given to the public, and we're very proud. We'll have a report in just a few minutes about the report card results. Overall, I think they were good, and we continue to congratulate our schools who are meeting that challenge and showing growth and high achievement. About 77% of our schools either stayed the same on their report card rating or moved upward. 37% of those moved up a rating. 17% either lost their rating by 1 or more. So certainly there are areas where we still have lots of work to do. We're going to hear about that in more detail from Dr. Payne and Dr. Mathis in just a few moments. Tonight is a very special event for the Department of Education as we work with our partners to unveil the 31st year of the South Carolina African American History Calendar. Our board members are all receiving a copy, and Ryan, I bet we have enough that we can give everyone in the audience one as you leave today, just like on the Oprah show. Okay, you get a gift. It's a beautiful tribute to 12 persons who have had a significant impact on the quality of life for all South Carolinians and many of them across the nation and world. Tonight, they'll be with us over at the Coker Center. You're invited to attend. It's a beautiful ceremony, and they will be there to autograph their months that they serve. So we're very, very excited about this, and I want to thank our staff, Ryan, and folks in our office and across the agency that work on this. We work with the University of South Carolina. We have teachers in our standards office, and Dr. Presley, your folks come in and work on lesson plans on on the lives of these extraordinary people, so that there will be a legacy forever that our students here in South Carolina will learn about the great work and be inspired by that and continue it on. So it's a really good day, and I appreciate, again, the opportunity to serve you as your state superintendent.
Thank you, Superintendent Spearman. We'll now take the time to hear from Ms. Kathy Hazelwood with some parliamentarian comments.
I'm just reiterating last month's comments. You might hear it one more time before I put y'all on probation. The meeting is the chair's meeting. If you have a question, the chair asks if anyone has a question. You direct your questions, if you should have a question, to the chair and not to the speaker. The speakers today should direct any comments to the chair, and if they are willing to take questions, they ask the chair if the chair has any questions, and will then recognize the board members at that time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unless something has changed, we do not have anyone signed up for public comment today, so we will move on to our committee reports, and we'll begin with Policy and Legislative. We had one item for approval today, which was placed on the consent agenda coming from the School District of Pickens County regarding a waiver request for an exemption to Reg 5919-350, but that item was placed on the consent agenda for the board today. For information, we had an annual report for our accreditations for schools. We also had a district waiver update, and we also had a short presentation showing us that our form stack is up and running on the board website, on the ed.sc.gov website, so that it will allow school districts around the state to submit waiver requests better, more effectively, and also requiring them to submit information more efficiently, so that it will not only cut down on time, but also the back and forth that's been going on, I guess, in the past with emails, allowing districts to apply for waivers. So we thank Ms. Longshore for that presentation today. Other than that, that is all from Policy and Legislative. The chair will now recognize Dr. Gamble to present the Educated Professions Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had 4 items to be placed on the consent agenda. EPO 1, which approved the appointment of Dr. Candace Moore to the Program Review Committee. EPO 2, it was the proposed amendment to develop guidelines concerning the acceptable degrees and coursework to obtain the Master's Plus 30 credential certification. EPO 3, and this was the amendment which will remove a requirement for certified educators without a master's degree to complete 3 semester hours of graduate coursework every 5 years to fulfill the renewal credit requirement. And EPO 4 is proposed to align the ADEPT plan due date with 2016 amendments to the date by which teacher contracts must be issued, and propose changes to allow districts flexibility in determining contract levels to educators with previous experiences. Those 4 items were placed on the consent agenda, and if any of the board members have any questions, Madam Chair, Ms. Hipp is with us.
Thank you, Dr. Gamble. Any questions regarding to those items on the consent agenda coming from the board? Hearing none. Thank you, Dr. Gamble.
Okay, we also had 2 items for information, and those 2 items were one concerned the results from our ADEPT findings from this past school term, and I invited Ms. Toll to come, what's your last name, Matter? Well, whatever she just said, to come, to come and present that to the full board, because I thought this may be information that would be helpful for the board.
Thank you, Dr. Gamble. Ms. Monsager?
Thank you, Chair. And Lewis is going to help us out with slides, but I'm happy to go ahead and get started. 2018-19 was the first full year of implementation of the new teacher evaluation system. And if you remember, a few things were revised for teachers. The first is a new rubric to measure instructional practice that's aligned to the profile of the South Carolina graduate. So we can't prepare students to be college and career ready unless the instruction in our classrooms really matches that, and the new teacher evaluation tool does that. The second is that teachers really wanted the process to be more timely, to get feedback that was useful, that could impact future lessons, and so a coaching and growth model was built into teacher evaluations. Next, that there would be some kind of data system that wasn't a series, other one, Lewis. The one that says ADEPT up front. Thank you, sir. A new data system that wouldn't just be a series of paper forms, but districts would have an opportunity to come into the 21st century and put their evaluation forms online, and more importantly, have transparency into trends. Do we have groups of teachers that need help in certain elements on the teacher rubric? So we wanted to share with you the results first for what districts reported on teacher evaluations in 18-19, and then second, what they say their plans are for 19-20. So to start with the results, projected for you right now are the overall ADEPT results reported to us at the end of June. The percentages of met, not met, incomplete, and not reported are consistent with the percentages that we've seen over the past 4 years. Incomplete may not be familiar to you. That's when an evaluation has been started, but a teacher, for whatever reason, is not able to be present for the full evaluation period. Evaluation could also be marked incomplete if the process was not followed with fidelity, so to give a teacher a chance to repeat it if the process wasn't completed. This number of not reported is also consistent with what we've seen in previous years, but our previous data system didn't allow us to dig in to where those not reported numbers were. So we now have the ability to offer coaching and support for districts to find out, was this just an evaluation created in error, or did you not get a chance to fully implement this and it needs to move to an incomplete? The only other question that came up in committee was what happens with not met educators. And so educators for whom they are not met a second time on a summative evaluation, they do go through a sanctioning process with their license, have a chance to do remediation and come back into the profession. But the vast majority of teachers who are not met are put on some sort of professional growth and development plan, and they stay within the profession. As far as future plans, districts submit an ADEPT plan to us every year. This year it was June 1st. We see that the numbers of districts, percentages of districts using the state model is consistent. Only Greenville and Florence 1 have gone through the state process of applying for a locally developed system. And this is the first year for Florence's new system. They're piloting it just with first-year teachers and veteran teachers, not with those trying to move their certificate. We do see more districts this year who will be using a mix of scoring approaches for their teacher evaluations versus just going with consensus with our old model, and the same number of districts who have developed their own local student learning objective rubric. Where we saw big changes, though, last year was the first year districts could use the new data system to report. 100% of districts did end up reporting new evaluation data in SC Lead, but we gave them a choice. You don't have to use all of the forms You don't have to have teachers sign within the system and give them access, but 77% of our districts say next year they want to use the whole system. They had such a positive experience with it that many more are using every feature, not just the reporting teacher, and giving teachers access because teachers can go in and see their own evaluation process, their own certification records, their own teacher evaluation records, and they like having that access and being able to see where they stand. We've also included a series of professional learning videos. So if a principal needs to give a teacher a recommendation about an area of support, there's a video available in there that is connected to the South Carolina teaching standards. Thank you, Chair. We will accept questions if you deem it appropriate.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Monsager? All right, hearing none, thank you so much. I
Thank you,
appreciate
ma'am.
that. You have one more item, Dr. Gamble?
Yes, it's the South Carolina Collective Leadership Initiative, and I think that all board members receive a copy of that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gamble. We'll now move on to recognize Dr. Downs for the Standards Learning and Accountability Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This morning, one action item was presented to the Standards Learning and Accountability Committee. Ms. Wendy Stevens, Ed Associate of the Office of Standards and Learning, presented on and requested final approval of the South Carolina College and Career Ready Standard for World Language Proficiency. Ms. Stevens stated that the standard has been improved as it relates to the clarity and also purposeful target language use, which will better guide educators in helping students to use the targeted language. The standard can be used at any grade level and with any type of program, grades K-12. The committee approved this standard and also approved placing it on the consent agenda. We did not have any information items this morning.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Downs, for your committee report. We'll move on to our Innovation and Finance Committee report, and I recognize Mr. Boutson for that report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had two items for action this morning. Both had to do with the request from the school district to dispose of property. One has to do with the Greenwood County School District 50. They've got about 8 acres that they're not using, aren't going to use, and happens to be the site of a tower for SCE. No, for
Duke.
Probably
educational TV,
SCE.
SCE TV. I get lost in the SCEs and all. For SCE TV, and so they propose that they're going to deed that property to SCE TV so that they can keep their tower there. And the other request came from Union County. They have about 88 acres on 5 different parcels. It's worth about $5.6 million. They don't have a buyer, but they propose to sell it. They don't need it. And they're going to take the proceeds from the sales and put it in their fund for capital improvements. We voted to forward both of those to the consent agenda. We had 2 information items. One had to do with Proviso 1.88, which is $50 million that the state legislature gave to the State Department to be used to, for 2 purposes. One, to help small, impoverished school districts with capital needs. The other is to help encourage those same small districts to consolidate. They got it about 10% right, which sounds pretty typical, which is to say that the $50 million ain't anywhere near enough, but we'll stay tuned for that on for another time. The other proviso is 1.95, which took the schools of choice legislation that had a limit of 1 school of choice per district, which I've been assured several times was was a Scrivener's error, but it was never corrected. And changed that so that districts could have multiple schools of choice, and also changed it from schools of choice to schools of innovation. Pickens County came before the Policy and Legislative Committee this morning with their proposal for that first district to do it. I don't know why every superintendent hadn't jumped on this like a duck on a June bug, but we'll talk about that at another time too. And those are just information items. I think we'll probably have an action item at some point about the $50 million, how we're going to divvy that up. So if anybody is in regular conduct with Solomon and can get us some wisdom, I'm sure we're going to need that, how we're going to divide the baby. It's too small for one, much less among all the others. So that's all the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bootson, for your committee report. The chair now recognizes Mr. Brennan to present the ELC committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee met this morning. We reviewed 10 teacher cases this morning. 8 of them were suspensions for unprofessional conduct. 2 were public reprimands for unprofessional conduct. The full board licensure committee met prior to lunch, and they ratified the actions of this committee with one exception, and that was that Mr. Bootson recused himself on the case involving Dr. Winbush. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Coming from the full board ELC, we had 2 items this morning. One involved the approval of a teacher to apply for reinstatement of her certificate, and the other was to approve a teacher applying for the PACE program. And those were our 2 items before full board ELC this morning. We're going to go into the consent agenda. Okay. The consent agenda has been handed out. Does everybody have a copy? Is there a motion to approve those items placed on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will now have our South Carolina Board of Education report and an item for action, and we'll be hearing from Counsel Kathy Hazelwood.
If it please the board, this is the second and final reading on a change of to the rules of governance, SBE Rules of Governance BCBD, board meeting agenda. And if you will recall, in June, there was a motion to remove 2 items from the consent agenda, which was a matter of first impression for the board, for the parliamentarian, for the Office of General Counsel. So in return to do additional research and proposed a change to the rule, which is before you, and came before you at the August meeting. I messed up the agenda for the September meeting when it should have been the second reading, so here is the second and final reading. So the change is that following each committee report, so today we had the 4 committee reports. No one suggested at the end of the committee report, when an item was being placed on the consent agenda, that they wanted to remove that. That will be the opportune time, that will be the only time that a member of the board will be able to ask to or object to the placement of a matter on the consent agenda. When you are completing your committee, Dr. Downs is completing her committee report, that is the opportune time to ask for world language proficiency to be removed, and the only time. So I'd ask that you approve that rule change.
We can vote now.
And if the chair has any question.
Do we have any questions for Deputy Superintendent Hazelwood before we vote? Yes, Ms.
Madam Chair. If I remember correctly, when we met in our subcommittee, the person the board member that objected was not a official member of that subcommittee. We discussed it in detail and put it on consent agenda, and then that's when it came here, and we, it wanted to be removed. So, what if they are not a part of that subcommittee?
The objection is made here. It doesn't matter what's happened in your committee meeting. The objection can only be made here when the committee chair is making a report to the full board of what occurred in the committee. So you have said, I have one item for approval and 2 items for information, and you launch into what that is, then the board member can make the objection at that point to withdraw that from the consent agenda and discuss it after you take up the consent agenda. So if there's only one, if you've got 5 things on the consent agenda in total, but there's one item that's being objected to, you would take up the other 4 items, vote them through the consent agenda, and then proceed to a discussion on that one item.
Thank you. Any further? Did I see your hand?
Yeah, and I guess that was my clarification. So any member of the board could pose an objection to an item on the consent agenda?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Bootson.
Which doesn't mean you object to the item, you just object to it being bundled in with all the rest of them, and maybe you just wanted to have a discussion or ask questions or whatever. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Hazelwood? Okay, thank you so much. So we need to approve that at this point. So we need a motion to
Move for approval of second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then we have the new SBEROGBCBD regulation as stated. Thank you so much.
LMNOP?
Yes. We have some items for information now. We'll start with the cyclical review of the South Carolina's accountability system, and presenting will be Ms. Rainey Knight. No? Mr. Payne.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. By means of introduction, we're going to first start out, this item is about the cyclical review of South Carolina's accountability system. What I'd like to start out by saying is if you have questions, please write them down and send them to us. Next month at the November meeting, we're going to do a deeper dive into the report card and answer whatever specific questions you may have. There are literally millions of pieces of data that we have, and so we could probably spend from now until next November just going through the data, but if there are specific things you'd like for us to discuss or talk about, please do that. By the November board meeting, all of the tests that are still embargoed will be released. Currently, both ACT and NAEP results are still embargoed, but by the November meeting, those will be unembargoed and we'll be able to share that with you. So if you do have questions, if you wouldn't mind, just write those down and we will be happy to make sure we address them. The other thing that I want to point your attention to is our online interactive website, screportcards.com. There you will find links to all the information that you need and probably more. You can also download some spreadsheets if you want to look at it in a more statewide level. So I'm going to kick this off by giving, I was going to say 30,000 foot view. This might be even higher than that, or about 40 or 50,000 foot view. Snapshot of the report cards and our results for this academic year. Oh, and that's the wrong one, I'm sorry. So what I'll be, as we're bringing up the PowerPoint, what I wanted to share is that federal regulations and the federal law, or the Every Student Succeeds Act, requires that states have an accountability system in place, and it requires a number of things that we have to have. We have to include students' performance on English language arts and mathematics. We have to have graduation rate. We have to have some kind of student success or school quality indicator. We have state statutes that also prescribes the sorts of things that we have to do, namely that we have to have an integrated or a combined federal and state accountability system. We have to use a 100-point scale, and we use designations of excellent all the way down to unsatisfactory when we're identifying that. As you all know, prior to last year, the old system of accountability for states centered solely on statewide assessments. And our new system, the new way of doing it, the flexibility, allows states to do a little more than that. But what we have to be able to do is make sure that it's reportable by all kinds of students, by different subgroups of students, that we're able to disaggregate it, that we're able to meaningfully differentiate between schools, and that we have, of course, the requirements of the federal and the state law. So in this 100-point scale, you see here the distribution of those points by the indicators that we're required to have. You'll see, I'll start at the fourth from the bottom, English learners' progress. You get points for that if you have a sufficient number of students who are working on building their proficiency in the English language. So it's not that you just have a bunch of English language learners, it's they're still working to become fluent in English. So if that applies, if you have enough students, then you're in that with ELL category. Without ELL means that you have too few to really make that measure count, so you would give those different points. And so you see the distribution of points by elementary, middle, and high school. Academic achievement is, of course, students' performance in English language arts and mathematics, which is SC Ready at elementary and middle, and English 1 and Algebra 1 at the high school. Preparing for success is science and social studies, biology and U.S. history, Constitution at the high school. Student progress is a new method or a new calculation methodology, but we're looking not only at how much were students expected to grow, but how much did they grow last year in English language arts and math. School quality is our student engagement survey that we administer grades 3 through 12. Graduation rate, you know, of course, and then college and career ready is a measure at the high school where we have one of 9 ways that a student can be college or career ready. As you see, and as you can probably guess, this involves countless staff hours and millions of pieces of data that we're pulling together. And so I would be remiss if I did not recognize our Office of Research and Data Analysis that spends months putting all of these parts and pieces together, embargoing it so that school districts can go in and take a look, identify if we've made a mistake, and if we need to clarify something and get this done by the published date. So how did we do? So you see in the slide before you our performance overall. This is combined grades 3 through 8 in SC Ready and ELA and math. And you'll see in the green on the right that overall we improved our performance in the percentage of schools and students that met or exceeded proficiency in SC Ready and ELA by 3.7% over last year and 0.5% in mathematics. Of course, at the grade level, there's differences. So 3rd grade, 4th grade look a little different than 7th and 8th grade. But overall, we're ticking up a little bit in ELA and mathematics. SC Pass, that's the test that we use to administer for science and social studies in the elementary and middle grades. And you see there that we had about a 1% drop in social studies and 0.3% drop in science. Now, one of the things that I will just point your attention to when you see that 0.3% drop, as you know, when you're looking at a percentage, a change in the numerator or a change in the denominator makes a difference. In other words, if we have more kids taking science, we could have the same number meeting and exceeding proficiency, but if we just got more kids in those tested grades, that'll make the percentage drop. So just numbers matter, I guess, is what I wanted to say. At the high school level, here is our results or our performance in our end of course assessment. Now, it's very important you're looking at this and you're like, wow, we're going down. One of the things that I want to impress upon you is at the high school level, we use as part of our accountability system a cohort model. What does that mean? Well, we looked at the seniors last year, and for the students who were seniors last year, we looked back to find how they scored whenever they took English 1, Algebra 1, Biology, and U.S. History, Constitution. So in some instances, a senior last year who would have taken English 1 in the 8th grade, right, that could be back to 2013, 2014, 2015 when that student tested. And in that time, since then, the 2014-15 year, we have new standards, we have a new test, we have a new uniform grading scale, we have new cut scores. So this is a legacy effect that we anticipated using that cohort model, since so much has changed for a lot of these kids since they originally took it. But again, just underscoring here that this is a cohort model. Whenever the student took, we wait till they get to that senior year, and that's when we include them in the academic ratings. One of our measures is college and career readiness, and there are 9 ways that a student can be college and career. So students being successful in advanced placement or IB, students getting particular scores on SAT or ACT or ASVAB, completing CTE credentials, completing work-based learning, completing dual credit with a C or better. There's all kinds of ways that we have. And you see in comparison from last year, overall we ticked up about a little over 5%, most notably in the number of students who are career ready. And so you see it was a little decrease in college and career ready. That means those are the students who meet one of those on the college side as well as one of those on the career side. College ready is that they only have met it in one of the college areas, and then career ready means that they have it in only one of the career. But overall, you see that we have more students who are college or career ready, and of those, predominantly due to more students just being career ready. Ready to work is what we used to use was the work keys. It's now the ready to work is the test that we use, but it still has the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And you can see here comparison of year over year how much better we did. Now you can see, one could look at this and say, wait a minute, I see 3 yellow numbers and 2 green. Just because there's yellow numbers may not be a bad thing, because what you'll see in this is that rather than those students scoring bronze and silver, they're moving up into gold and platinum. So if you take 0.5 and 3.4, you get 3.9. If you take negative 3.5 and negative 0.4, you get 3. So ideally what we think we're seeing is students are just doing better on our ready to work assessment. Dual enrollment, you see in terms of the number of students, we had over 1,000 students more in 2019 in dual enrollment. And you see that we ticked up just a little, up 1.5% in terms of those who had 6 hours scoring C or better, which is what we use in part of our college readiness. So we have our excellent to unsatisfactory ratings. Well, what did that look like at a state level? When you look at this, you see the elementary, middle, and high, and then you see either a positive or a negative number. A positive means that's how many more than we had last year. A negative number means that's how many fewer than we had last year. So this year with our report cards coming out, we had 24 more elementary schools that scored excellent than we did last year. We had 16 more middle schools scoring excellent than we did last year, and so on. What you'll notice in that pattern, right, is excellent and good, positive numbers. As you get to kind of average and certainly below and unsatisfactory, their negative numbers means that in general, schools are improving in terms of their overall rating. So we had at the unsatisfactory level 23 fewer schools scoring unsatisfactory than we did last year, 23 middle schools scoring, fewer schools scoring unsatisfactory than last year, and so on. Well, let's do a year-by-year comparison, and hopefully this will make sense. What you'll see on the top for the columns, you'll see what their rating was last year, and this is all schools. What you see in the rows, or excellent 19, good 19, is what they were rated at this year, okay? Then you see kind of this diagonal that kind of goes across from the bottom left, I had to get my left and right mixed up, to the top right. So the numbers in bold black font basically means what they were last year is what they are this year. So we had 122 schools that were excellent last year that are excellent this year. 94 schools were good last year, they're good this year. And all the way down 18 schools that were unsatisfactory last year, they're still unsatisfactory this year. What you'll see in the green and additional one should be green up there. What you see in the green is those schools that improved. So we had 30 schools, actually we had 83 schools, that's the one that should be green font, that were good last year. This year they're excellent. They moved up into that excellent category. We had 30 schools that were average last year that moved up to excellent. 9 schools that were below average last year that moved to excellent, and 1 school that was unsatisfactory that jumped all the way to excellent from that past year. So you'll see a lot more numbers on that side, right? What you see in the bottom left are the red numbers, and those are basically what they were last year and what they were this year. So we had 2 excellent schools last year that moved into below average. We had 6 good schools last year that moved to below average, and so forth. And you'll see that we had no excellent schools that moved to unsatisfactory. In other words, go the complete drop. So this gives you a distribution of how they were last year compared to how they are this year, with the overall trend being about the same and improving their overall rating. So we wanted just to provide this snapshot because, again, we want to come next month when all of the data are fully unembargoed and answer whatever questions or take a little deeper dive into what questions you specifically may have. As I began, the old way of doing it was, under No Child Left Behind, was centered solely around tests. So what we have now is a better representation of an accountability system, because we do know, and we've shared here before, that summative tests don't test student motivation or student interest. If they just want to make up bubbles as they go along. So really, what are those other things we're looking at? But we do have an opportunity through our cyclical review of taking another look at it, identifying what did we get right, what can we improve on. And so the department is excited to be working with the Education Oversight Committee and Superintendent Spearman and you as we move into the cyclical review. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Rainey Knight, who is the interim executive director, to talk a little about that cyclical review.
Thank you, John. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I guess when I came on board about a month ago, John, Dr. Payne, and Dr. Mathis and I had a phone call, and it became really apparent very clearly that why didn't we look at a collaborative effort towards the cyclical review. We thought we could have some positive, substantive conversations to look at any amendments that may come up in terms of changing the accountability system. So we all jumped on board on that. It's been quite obvious, even in the last month, that that was a good idea. One was our timeline. Our timeline had us going into June. It was going to really work better for the department and submitting the ESSA plan by doing this in April. So we backed up our date so that we could work in unison with that. And then the department offered some services, potentially some services of a vendor that they're already working with, a national group that may look at what other states are doing, what are some things that we might consider doing that we don't have in South Carolina right now. So we want to avail ourselves of those services as well. So with that, I'm going to let Dana Yao, who's the Director of Public Information, to go through a brief overview of that process. And Madam Chairperson, we would be happy to take any questions at that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of State Board. I'm just going to go through some details, but the first thing I want to touch on is the legislative directive that we have and really deconstruct this. This may look familiar to those of you who've been around for a while. We did this process in 2013, and we've even had some of our members say, we feel like we just did this, but we're doing it again. It's time to look at the accountability system in the name of continuous improvement. This is the directive that we have that beginning in 2020, the EOC, working with you all and a broad-based group of stakeholders, is to look at the accountability system, really through the lens of the profile of the graduate. And I'll note the last sentence there, that the accountability system needs to reflect evidence that students have developed these skills and characteristics of the profile. And I'll just remind everybody of that. This really has been the sticky widget when we're looking at the accountability system, because a lot of the things that both state and federal law require of an accountability system don't fit nicely into this profile. So we've had these conversations a lot before. We're meeting with outside groups to try to do better at that. So that's one of the focuses of this particular process. I'll just go through a little bit of the timeline backing up. We did do this in April of 2014. We worked with a group called EPIC, the Educational Policy Improvement Center. That was the first time we actually looked at the accountability system through a different lens. At that point, we had a state system and a federal system, and that really wasn't working well for us. These were just some very broad recommendations from this first cyclical review that we affirmed the profile of the graduate. We include measures of post-secondary success, not just high school graduation. That's something that we've tried to do with the current system that John talked about. We want to encourage flexibility to allow schools and districts to be incubators of change and innovation, and of course remove those barriers that may exist to transformation. And I'm not going to go through all of this just in the interest of time, but I want to get to the current timeline so that you all see where we're going forward in this. In February of 2019, just as a reminder, the EOC voted not to consider proposed changes that were brought forward to the accountability system. That was given pending legislation that's still out there, and also this process, the pending cyclical review. In June of 2019, just as a reminder, the Proviso 194 of the 1920 General Appropriations Act, so the budget bill, suspended testing of science in grades 8 and social studies in grades 5 and 7. That's just a reminder, that's the current school year. Last month, we went forward to the Academic Standards and Assessment Subcommittee at the EOC, went through this process with them, and they looked at a plan for approval and a timeline. So they've approved that. That will go forward to the full EOC next Monday. So we're coming to you because you all are definitely involved in this process. In terms of how we go forward, this October until early February of 2020, we want to meet with groups, those stakeholder groups that are outlined in the legislation. Parents and families, business folks, educators. We're not limited to any of those folks. John has shared some of his special education colleagues. So we really want to have a broad-based group of stakeholders that are included in these discussions and come forward to the smaller group with some feedback from those groups. So we see that and there's a little bit of change to what you see on the screen, and I'll hand out a handout to the chair in a minute. So January to March of 2020, we see that a smaller, probably tighter group will come together to actually make recommendations to the EOC. And then that will go forward to the EOC in April, and then we anticipate those changes going forward in the ESSA plan in May. So let's see. Stakeholder input, of course, is a huge part of this. We see that being face-to-face sessions, listening sessions, community forums. Some other states that are doing this nicely are Ohio and Arizona. They've done a really great job of including stakeholders that are not just the usual suspects. Some parents that have concerns that come from not your usual groups. And these are some potential partners. John mentioned the Center for Assessment. That's a group that the department's already working with on some other projects, so we're looking at them partnering with us on this. Also, the Carolina Family Engagement Center. That's a grant that, the School Improvement Council has received. And part of that grant, they work with families and parents in rural districts. And part of that grant is that they have to teach families and educate them about the report cards. So we're going to kind of piggyback on that and talk about the cyclical review and what parents want to see and what they value in the information that they hear about schools. So, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions, and I have a handout as well.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and pass that. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Payne, Dr. Knight, or Dr. Yao at this time? Dr. Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Knight, she was at the superintendent's meeting recently, and I had a question relative to the cyclical review. First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming and sharing this with the State Board. I mean, there's always been a question in terms of exactly what the State Board's role is in this process. And I guess that's my first question there. Kind of share with me from the EOC's perspective. I noticed the legislation says in collaboration with the State Board. What role does the State Board play in this process?
Well, I guess it can be a number of things. One is today to make you aware of the process. In the handout that you're getting, we also want the State Board to nominate at least one person to serve on the cyclical review to represent the State Board. We're also going to ask the EOC to nominate one person to serve on the cyclical review to represent the EOC. So those really are two ways. We also would expect, and Madam Spearman, Superintendent Spearman is also by law on the committee, so that's representation from the State Board, from the Superintendent of Education. But also just to keep y'all informed in that process, and certainly any questions you have as we're moving forward with it, we'll be happy to come back and answer them. Dr. Payne and Dr. Mathis will be part of this process as well, so just keeping that constant communication. But it's really the cyclical review team that will make those recommendations to the EOC. So that would be my, the way I see as that the State Board being involved.
And the other point, and I shared this with you during the superintendent's meeting, we are in year 2 of a brand-new merged accountability system, okay? And so this is the second year schools have received ratings. And in all honesty, even in the second year, there was a totally different growth metric. Sure. So we have not even had 2 consistent years of the same model. Mm-hmm. It concerns me that being in year 2 of a model that wasn't even the same as year 1, we already talking about revision to a model we just created.
Sure. Well, you actually have 2 changes. You've got social studies removed, and then you change vendors with the growth. So, I certainly see your point, but those are changes that really are outside of our control. But I would, I don't even know with the cyclical review what we'll be able to implement and when it's appropriate to implement it, being how would the data be collected? Is that data out there? And we may want to do something, but we don't even have that data. So there may be some time, upfront time, leading time that we would need to even implement anything. Also remember the EOC and I guess the state agreed to delay. We were going to have the state report cards, but ESSA, and I forgot the timeline on that. It was about a year in there that we agreed not to have any ratings at all, so that we could have one report card. What was that? It was 3 years. So that does, create a problem with what you're saying, that we could have had more years of a report card, but decided to wait on the ESSA so that it could be one. Again, so you wouldn't have as many changes. And then the other question I would just tell you that you asked about, the EOC had really wanted to try to say have some consistency for schools. And so I did go back and look at that because I thought, what was it that we were talking about? And I looked, and I believe it is on those overall ratings, 0 to 100, that we would hold those cut scores the same. And is that what you, yes, Molly, remember? It was to hold those cut scores the same for 5 years. We've tried it the other way, and I was superintendent when we upped it, and it was really almost impossible. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think every school started losing. And it was just, right. It sounded good on paper, but the reality was you could not keep up. Even the best school districts were falling. So holding those 0 to 100 cut scores on the overall report card the same for 5 years. And we are still committed to that, keeping the same. Those indicators may have some additional components, and I do see that happening, particularly middle and elementary school, adding some components to that. So that may be a change, but I really think it'll be a change for the better. It would be a better reflection of the portion of the South Carolina graduate, even though I know it's a change. And that, you would like for it to be consistent year to year. I'm not sure, Dr. Green, if that will happen. I mean, just because of some good things that are going on that may help enhance that report card. Yes, ma'am.
For
And I'm sorry, I
clarification,
should
so-
have really addressed that to you. I apologize.
That's okay. Are we in the first or the second year of the cut scores remaining the same?
Second.
We're in the second.
2018 and then 2019 of the cut score staying the same. So what has been, stated that we would keep those at least another 3 years.
Thank you. Any other questions coming from the board?
Madam Chair, excuse me, Mr. Brown.
Please, Superintendent, please.
Yeah, I was just going to thank you for coming and for the spirit of collaboration, and I agree, Dr. Green, it's hard to know what's happening when we consistently change, but there are some things that we knew when we adopted the first report card that we could do better, and that we agreed that we would work on that. And you mentioned the one that I'm very, very interested in, and that is in adding some other indicators to the elementary and middle report card, because they truly are all test scores right now, plus the small survey.
Sure.
But, and I think we can do that better as well. So I appreciate your willingness to work with us, and I know that there's lots of conversation already going on. It's easy to say that we want to have other indicators on building skills and characteristics in elementary and middle school, and we certainly have a lot of that going on in our schools, but measuring it and being able to differentiate that measurement from one school to the other, it's harder said than done. So, thank you for being
We're
willing
going
to
to give
work
it another
on
shot.
Mr. Brennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, based on those results that you shared, I'm interested in what the EOC would say also, is what is the headline out of that for parents and the General Assembly?
Well, I think we are seeing some improvement. I mean, I think it's still kind of a mixed bag, and we certainly know that we've got areas to work on, both in terms of students' performance, but also on the accountability system in terms of making it a little bit more pristine.
I'll address, just because we did the headline for some of the news materials that we did. I think we definitely want to point out the overall improvements that schools have made. One of the concerns we have, though, is the college and career readiness component, because we are moving towards, we're not just looking at high school graduation anymore. We're looking at preparedness for college and careers. And some of those measures, particularly on the career side, are self-reported and a little different. So that's cause for concern. But we are working with the State Department on, finding a system that's better reflective of true career readiness and looking at some of those measures of that portion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions coming from the board for our presenters?
Madam Chair, if I could just respond to the question that Mr. Brennan had. I just met with my board chair to go over our meeting agenda, and so we talked about the school report card that I'll be presenting on next week. And as it relates to headline, I'll say it's a little complicated. I think people are going to have to dig down in the data a little bit to really craft really a good understanding of what the rating actually should say to you. One thing I applaud the EOC and the State Department and all who were involved in that is that there was a very robust growth component, which I think was very, very important. And though some schools may not have done as well, I even had one school that didn't, and that's fine. But it does really show how well we are moving students and not necessarily simply absolute achievement. And so I appreciate that. And so for people who are really evaluating really what the report card data means, you have 80% of the report card rating at the middle and elementary level comes from test score data, and 40% of it is absolute achievement, and 40% of it is growth. And so to really, really understand what the data means, you're probably going to need to look and dig into it a little deeper to see exactly what the numbers mean. So that's a long answer there, Mr. Brennan. But
Thank you so much to all our presenters for that information. We've learned a lot. One more. Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question about the last part where we're supposed to submit a nomination. Is the nomination committee going to do this Are we all supposed to submit someone's name?
I'm not sure, since this is my first time hearing about that, so I'm not sure how we're going to handle that. I see the deadline is October 31st, so it has to be before our next meeting. So I'm going to speak with those who can help us with that and see what we can do to facilitate and get that nominee to the EOC. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, next up, we have our reports from our schools coming from Dr. LaToya Dixon, and respectively, we'll hear for about Florence County School District 4, Allendale County, as well as Williamsburg County. Hello.
Good afternoon. I have a very short but quick report on each of our school districts. I'll start with Florence 4. Our next community meeting is going to be held on October the 21st at 6 o'clock in the Media Center. We are sending out invitations for parents to attend, and we'll be giving an update on school report cards and school performance, as well as other events. We've concluded map testing now at both Brockington and Johnson Middle School and Brockington Elementary. We're in our initial stages of reviewing that data. We have data review and instructional planning collaboration sessions scheduled several times throughout October. I believe there are 5 scheduled sessions. We're continuing our shared services plan with Florence School District 1 and Florence School District 2 this year, and we did have students who represented all 3 schools at the South Carolina Department of Education's first Youth Anti-Bullying Summit, so we're glad to have representation there. We are continuing at Timminsville High School with a focus on post-secondary plans. Students at the high school have now visited Piedmont Central Community College, Florence Darlington Technical College, and the University of South Carolina, which the seniors visited on September 24th, as well as the sophomores. In terms of school report card results, Brockington received an overall rating of unsatisfactory. We missed maintaining our rating of below average by 2 points. However, our growth rating was average, so we're glad about that. Johnson Middle School received an overall rating of good, improving their previous rating of average from last school year. And Timminsville High School kept their rating of below average. We missed average by 2 points. So we've made some progress. It's been hard work, and anybody that's ever done the work of school improvement, I just don't think we do it justice when we say what a school scored on a report card in a sentence. I've done that work. It's the hardest work I've ever done in my life. I only have 10 more years until I can retire. That concludes my report for Florence 4.
Yes, ma'am.
Allendale. In Allendale, we had a community meeting on September 23rd. Over 200 individuals were present. We highlighted the partnership, the CTE partnership with Georgia Pacific, where we have 3 apprentices who shared their experiences working as apprentices at Georgia Pacific. Hats off to Dr. Margaret Gilmore, who continues to work and expand community partnerships there to provide more opportunities to students. They had their college application day on September 24th and included representatives from the College of Charleston, Claflin University, USC Beaufort, USC Salkehatchie, Denmark Tech, and Allen University. And they were on site and gave students information about the college application process and even assisted them with applying. The Allendale Fairfax Middle School students toured the University of South Carolina Aiken on September 26th, and those middle school students were advised about thinking about college and other post-secondary options as soon as possible and what it takes to succeed as a college student. Allendale Elementary maintained a below average rating from the 2018 report card, but saw a rating point increase in 4 of 5 of the accountability metrics. Allendale Fairfax maintained its rating, middle school maintained its rating of good, and our high school gained enough points to move from unsatisfactory to below average. The high school made notable progress in the college and career readiness category and graduation rate category, so we're happy about that. Any questions regarding Allendale?
Any questions for Alan about Allendale? Go ahead.
In Williamsburg, we're continuing to work on professional development around analyzing data related to map testing. We held some professional development sessions in this regard on September 24th and 25th. The school district strategic planning sessions are scheduled for October 15th and October 22nd, with an emphasis on study of the new and current data around academic achievement and other facets that will update the district strategic plan. Invitations to participate in the sessions have been sent out to community members. And the Williamsburg County Teacher Induction Academy is continuing its work with new teachers, providing strategies and planning and preparing lessons that reflect knowledge, skills, content, and instructional design appropriate, aligned to the standards. We're excited about the Director of Guidance in Williamsburg, who facilitated 2 dual enrollment meetings, which brought together educators from Williamsburg Technical College and the school district to discuss procedural and logistical features of the dual enrollment program. Our goal is to increase the college and career readiness metric for students in Williamsburg County. In terms of school report card results, we saw significant improvement at Kingstree Middle Magnet School of the Arts and Hemingway M.B. Lee Middle School. Each school improved its rating from average to good. We're really happy about that because you may or may not know that Hemingway M.B. Lee Middle School was on our priority list, our old list, in 2016. It's no longer on that list, but we're happy that it not only maintained its improvement, but improved its rating. C.E. Murray Middle and High maintained an average rating. D.P. Cooper, which is now closed, last year was its last year of operation, decreased from average to below average. Kenneth Gardner Elementary, Greeleyville Elementary, and Hemingway High maintained a below average. Hemingway Elementary School and Kingstree High's rating decreased from below average to unsatisfactory. We've been in Williamsburg now a year and almost 6 months. We still have a lot of work to do. We've been doing a lot of operational, functional, structural type of work, and Dr. Wilder and I feel like we are now at a place where we can dig deeper and deeper into instruction. But a bit of good news, they also had students that attended the Youth Anti-Bullying Summit. The theme was Bullying Not in My School, and Hemingway Middle High School won the South Carolina Youth Anti-Bullying Summit poster contest. So we're proud that they were able to earn that achievement.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. Any questions for Dr. Dixon? Mr. Bootson?
Just a comment. You forgot to tell everybody that from 2016 2019 in Florence 4 on the SC Ready at all 6th grade levels and in both English language arts and math, there was positive change. Can't say that about the other 2 districts. Can't say that about the state. So, attaboy.
I think it's atta-girl, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Duly noted, Dr. Dixon.
You're going to have to own that.
Absolutely.
Dr. Gray?
So Dr. Dixon, you alluded to the hard work that school improvement is. And, I simply say, never go weary doing good. We appreciate the work that you're doing and all the folks who are in these distressed communities. And quite honestly, you are correct. One simple rating does not necessarily reflect all the hard work that is going on there. And I think we all should recognize that. And often people like you and others need to hear that we appreciate the hard work and not necessarily beat you up because in where everyone thinks that it should be. So I say continue and we continue to support you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Dixon, I just want to point, I can tell that you're working extremely hard, not just by the data that you presented, but I remember when you first started in Florence 4, I think it was, and I don't remember that much gray. So I can tell, and we do appreciate it. Let's just give her a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
If there are no other questions, any other business to come before the board before we adjourn?
Madam Chair, if I may, I just have a comment. Mr. Bootson, you said something a little earlier in the meeting I thought was very important, and I just want to reiterate that. With the waivers and the authority that the State Board of Education has now, in particular with the schools of choice and the Pickens waiver that came before you today, that is significant authority given to this board. And I am going to predict that you're going to be receiving more waiver requests. And while I'm very much in favor of waivers, I would just challenge you all that as those waivers come forward, that we really do need to look at each one very carefully to make sure that the leadership is in place in those schools, in those communities to handle what all are they asking for. Because it could, I think your prediction that, I don't know why every superintendent's not coming before you, may just have that happen. And I think you need to really take that very seriously. the legislation to change from one school of choice in a district to the plural schools of choice came at the request from the agency and other folks, and I think it was the right thing to do. But at the same time, there is an awful lot of authority given to you in certification or in whatever it is that the district might want to be innovative. But I would just ask you to as that happens, to please be very, very careful and to look at that and make sure that the leadership is there and that the district is in a place where it can handle whatever innovation it might be asking for. So just a comment.
Thank you, Superintendent Spearman. I do have one thing that I want to say before we dismiss. As it relates to the member who's going to represent the state board on the Cyclical Review Committee, I don't know what the process will be for nominating that person, but I do want you board members to consider this. Since we only have one person that's going to represent us, these are some things I think we need to consider, that the person has the time to make those meetings, okay? Because we've only got one shot to say what we need to say. And also that person understands numbers. If that's not your strength, this is probably not the committee for you. It is a cyclical review of data, so you're going to be presented with a lot of numbers. So if you don't, this is just not an appointment that you just want to sit on just to say that we have a representative. We need somebody who can crunch numbers with the best of them, and they are the best. So that's just my 2 cents as far as our representative to that committee. And if there's no other business to come before this board, we stand adjourned. Thank you.